Bismillah Rahman Rahim. First of all, I'd like to welcome you. It's a, it's a pleasure for us. Our prayers that Afghanistan sees peace, because you've been through probably in the last 30 years, or more, 35 years, Afghanistan has seen bloodshed. And so, as a Pakistani who has Afghan descent, I want to pray for your peace in your country, and inshallah hope that things move towards a settlement, a reconciliation. Now I'll just give you my perspective. My party's perspective is that whatever we had, our policies towards Afghanistan might have been in the past, in the future, all our policies should be to make sure that there is non-interference in the affairs of the Afghans and facilitate peace as much as possible. Learn from our past mistakes. We should learn from our past mistakes, and that's just not in Afghanistan. All our policies formed after the Afghan jihad, where we backed militant groups and then did not disband those militant groups after the Afghan jihad was over. And so Pakistan has had a legacy dealing with these militant groups, which when it joined again the US-led war against terror, we turned against the same groups we had nurtured. We called them, first they were Mujahideen, we called them terrorists. And this country had suffered huge losses because of that. And because of that, we have an experience. We've learned, at least I'm talking about the people, have learned that that was a flawed policy, and that Pakistan should never again allow armed militias in our own country. And secondly, about the situation in Afghanistan, we should not interfere in the internal affairs of Afghanistan, facilitate peace if we can. So this in a nutshell is our experience, and my party feels that peace in Pakistan is dependent upon peace in Afghanistan. Our tribal areas are affected by what happens in Afghanistan, so given what has happened in Pakistan, I'm talking about not Afghanistan is still, you've got a longer history of bloodshed, but in our past experience of the last 14 years, we have felt that our tribal areas have, because of our forces going into our tribal areas and the way our tribal areas were used in the past, it has caused tremendous damage to Pakistan. We have suffered 60, 70,000 people dead, over $100 billion lost to the economy, and we have a Zarb-e-Azab, which is a temporary, there is a temporary relief, but unless we tackle it properly in the future, we could actually again have, when the population returns, the IDPs return back to the tribal areas, we could actually again have something flaring up there. So it's a temporary relief, but it needs a mixture of reconciliation and political settlement, using our tribal people who've been displaced to get back and resettle there, a program of reconstruction, rehabilitation. So Pakistan is in a tricky situation right now. But just to sum it up, I think peace in Afghanistan would be the key to peace in Pakistan, and we should do everything possible which can facilitate peace.
I realize that, media can really take things out of context, and that was taken out of context. You really had no idea that person was in your hospital?
Let me explain.
Okay, thank you so much.
Every month about 40 to 50 Afghans come to Shaukat Khanum Cancer Hospital in Lahore. 40 to 50.
Yeah.
And the hospital, what I was saying was that the hospital does not distinguish between human beings. That's the context I was saying. The hospital has a merit system because there are about 100 patients every day. Hospital can only take about 14, 15 because it's full. Hence, we have built a second one in Peshawar. So it has a merit policy, which I'm just a board of governors. I built the hospital, but I'm the member. I don't run the hospital. So it's a merit policy which takes people only on one reason: can they treat that cancer or not?
Right.
It doesn't matter whether you are Muslim, you are Hindu, you are Sikh, you are Afghan. It's a human being treated on merit. And so therefore, I got a letter from Taliban, Afghan Taliban, and I don't remember, this must be 2006, 5, 6, 7, like that, that they wanted to thank me for the treatment of a Taliban. Then, and I said this in the context that, you know, a Taliban commander once got treated there without me knowing. And I got this letter. So we found out that it was in 2000, a Mullah Rubani got treated in a hospital. Yeah. And 2000, Pakistan anyway recognized the Taliban then. You know, in 2001, they broke the context. But the context was not that, you know, whether it was a Taliban or not, it was a human being. The hospital, if, say, Balochistan Liberation Organization, some Baloch comes and gets treated, they're not going to ask, are you a terrorist or not? They just treat people whether the cancer is treatable or not. So it was in that context I was saying that it just treats human beings. It wasn't meant to be pro or anti-Taliban. It was just in the context of a human being.
Hi, this is Wajma Froq from Afghanistan. It's good to see you in person. And by the way, you are still very young from the times that we have seen you in cricket. Anyways, so I wanted to get your mind particularly around the issues of the tensions between the two countries, Afghanistan and Pakistan. We have been talking to each other. There are historical baggages. There are current grievances. There are tensions still in the relationship of even people to people. What I want to ask you is this one, that you as a political leader of Pakistan, that's very important in this political structure, do you really believe Afghanistan is a sovereign country? If you really believe Afghanistan is a sovereign country, then what do you think about the existence of the Taliban leadership in this country? In Pakistan, we have been hearing this for years, and now videos, for example, videos of Mullah Akhtar Mansoor came that he took bayat in Quetta. He gathered thousands of people in Quetta, and he took bayat. So that's the first question. The second question I want to ask you is that in the past 2 days, we have been hearing that the refugees, the Afghan refugees, might actually been the ones who are the terrorists, literally. So if the perception is there, that this morning we heard from one of your ministers, like Minister Qadir Baloch, he said, oh, maybe it was some of your refugees could be people who are actually Afghan Taliban and behind all these attacks. So if that's the perception, don't you think that it impacts the way refugees are being treated in Pakistan? At least weekly basis, we hear that they have been detained, there are arrests made. Do you think that it's actually fair? And the last thing I want to ask you is that you said some time ago, and that has actually created so much fuss in Afghanistan, and people were so upset about it, is that we heard you saying that Afghanistan's war is actually a jihad. And that created so much negative, particularly I, as a daughter of a general who fights, for example, who has so many other people who die on the battlefield. When we hear that our own neighbor says this, it actually makes me feel negative about you.
I mean, the context was, what is jihad? Jihad is basically fighting for your freedom. That's what jihad is in a simple definition. It's fighting against injustice and fighting for your freedom. So if, and I exactly quote what I said, if fighting against the Soviet occupation was jihad, then from that equation, fighting against the American occupation should be jihad too. not fighting against the Afghan government. Because at that time, remember, there was a proxy government too, when the Soviets were occupying. Najibullah was there, and before that others. So it was exactly the same situation. So if either one was jihad, then the other one was jihad. If one is in jihad, then the other is in jihad. So it was in that context. I mean, I specifically said that. But I come back to the other 2 points because I really need you to understand something. Look, here is someone who believes that Afghanistan is one country that cannot be ruled by anyone. It has a history. India could be ruled by people, but not Afghanistan. Neither Afghanistan nor the tribal areas of Pakistan. They have a history. They've always, anyone who has tried to conquer them or tried to impose their rule on them, they have fought for their freedom. It's something very envious because it's something which is to be admired about a nation. I admire that in a nation. I hate the idea of a nation being enslaved by another person, another country. For instance, my biggest thing was when the US war on terror started. I think that it was wrong of the US to wage this war, to occupy Muslim countries, to send their troops to Iraq. In England, I participated in this 2 million people who walked against the decision of Tony Blair to invade Iraq. Similarly, I thought that it was not the right thing for the Americans to do because no Taliban, no Afghan was involved in 9/11. Why was Afghanistan attacked? I mean, they should have separated Al-Qaeda with Taliban and let the Afghan people eventually, who have always been independent. I believe in non-interference, so they should have dealt with it. It might not have been this mess. There could have been various possibilities when you look at it. But I do not agree with one country occupying another country. I'm against that. I did not agree with Pakistan joining the American war on terror. Why did we have to join it? Why did we suffer all these losses? And I'm basically anti-war. I don't believe in war. So neither did I believe in the American involvement in Iraq or wherever they've got involved now. You just look at the mess they have created. Because war has unintended consequences. Everyone thought that the war would be very quick, over, done with, and they would be back home. But war creates desperate people. It creates extremism. So when Pakistan Army was being sent into the tribal areas, I stood up in the National Assembly and spoke against it. I told them to read the 80-year history of the tribal areas where the British interacted in the tribal areas. You read it, you would never send your army into the tribal areas. And look at the damage done there. I mean, we have 2.2 million refugees out of our own tribal areas. The tribal area has been devastated. We don't have the money to resettle them now. And God knows what's going to happen from these people. Unless we handle this very carefully, we have future militants coming out of these people. As it is, it's one of the, per capita, the highest, the greatest number of weapons are in Pakistan's tribal area per capita in the world. So, just to say that it wasn't that I was pro-Taliban or anti-Taliban. I'm anti-war. I'm anti-Indian Indian forces occupying Kashmir. I am anti all these, what they have done, the interventions. Look at Syria. It has potential of great devastation in the future. So whatever you think about my statements in the past, they are basically about one thing. War is not a solution to things. Number two, let me just make it clear. I believe that the future of Afghanistan and Pakistan does not lie, in boundaries. I believe that eventually one day there will be open borders between the two countries. I believe that our future is interlinked. I do believe that we have ruined our relationship and I blame us for intervention. We should not have taken sides in Afghanistan. I'm talking about the Afghan jihad. We should not have taken sides. By backing sides, we could have, just like what I'm worried about now is because in Saudi Arabia-Iran conflict, we should not take sides at all. We should play the role of getting them together. The moment we take sides, we no longer have the ability to play the part of a neutral mediator. So, I disagree with the way we dealt with Afghanistan from the Afghan jihad onwards, and especially when the jihad ended. We could have played a much better role. Instead, the role we played, we actually exacerbated the situation in Afghanistan. So I disagree with that, but do not consider me pro-Taliban or pro-anything. I'm pro-peace. I'm anti-war. And refugees, when we came into power, there was a lot of, in the whole of Pakistan, in the 3 provinces, there were a total of, I think, 90 terror attacks. In KP alone, there were 110, and there were 70 or 80 in the tribal areas. This is the year we came into power in 2013. So a lot of the attacks were blamed on Afghan refugees. And if you ask your ambassador, you will see your ambassador Jahanan. He will tell you that I got the KPK chief minister and the IG. We all got sat on the table, and especially after the army public school, there was that the phone calls were coming from Afghanistan. If you ask your ambassador, I played a big part in diffusing the tension because there was a lot of anger against the Afghan Mujahideen. And actually, I've gone on radio to say that they are our guests, and we should treat them as Muslims, as our brothers. So you can check with your Afghan ambassador, because I actually believe it's not just to please you. I'll just clarify also. It's not actually, you'll be really amazed what happened in this country after once terrorism went up, as more and more bomb blasts and suicide attacks started happening. And most of them were supposed to be from our tribal areas. It's not just the Afghan refugees. At one point in the other 3 provinces, Pashtuns were picked up by police indiscriminately. In Karachi, in Punjab, especially Karachi and Punjab, the Pashtuns were picked up. And anyone from tribal area was considered a potential terrorist. So there were a lot of cases of being police harassing people, Pashtuns from the tribal areas. So it's come down now. I mean, the last 1 year, as things have come down, so has the harassment has stopped. But I admit with you that, whenever there were thoughts of attacks from Afghanistan, and after the army public school, they said the SIMs were from Afghanistan SIMs. Immediately the anger was directed towards the Afghan refugees, which was then diffused.
Abbas, yeah? Abbas was? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it is an honor to have the American came to Afghanistan, or on your word, occupied, but by the Afghan people, by the majority of Afghan people, they welcomed for Afghanistan, that they came to Afghanistan, and we accordingly, we made our constitution, we made the election, we have the government, and we have a completely new state. So this is all thanks to the American and their allies, including Pakistan, that participated in this war. This war was against Taliban, against the brutality of Taliban, that at their time, they didn't believe to the right of the woman, they didn't believe to the right of other sectors, especially those sectors that they are not accepting that. And there was a difference between sectors. They were against Shiite. They were against the humanity, our humanity civilization. For example, they destroyed the ancient Buddhas, which is very famous. They destroyed a lot of other monuments and a lot of other legacies of the humanity inside Afghanistan. This is that allow me not to agree with you that every war, you are against the war and for the peace, and the war cannot solve anything. So through the history, even from beginning of Islam religion, there was war, Uhud war, Khandaq war, and so on. There was the war that there's caused some freedom. There was they brought justice for the people, and also we cannot really very easily condemn any kind of war. We in Afghanistan, we felt we were under Taliban brutality. We were killed. Our home was destroyed. We couldn't walk freely. And our economy was gone down. So it must be a war against this brutality. And we again, that if you say that, okay, Taliban is Mujahid and they are fighting against US occupation. About Russian occupation, it was very clear that whole Afghanistan was on fire. Whole Afghanistan was stand up and against the Soviet occupation. But here in this country, only Taliban and their Tahrik stood up against the American, not against the American, against the Afghans, against the civilians, that they killed a lot of innocent people in Afghanistan, and they are exploding, still they are continuing. Inside, some days ago, about 2 weeks ago, they did a blast inside the mosque and under the Maulavis, under the Imam's foot at the time. So these are the brutality of Taliban. How should you agree with those people with this kind of mentalities? Thank you.
I'm talking about war as a solution. I'm not talking about a fight to liberate yourself from oppression. I'm talking about war as a solution. Iraq war. Look at the consequences of Iraq war. You have now, Al-Qaeda has diminished and ISIS has been created. Look at the situation, intervention in Syria. Syria was a stable country. Look at it now. Look at Libya. I mean, if you think that foreign intervention has solved any issue, look at Somalia. Somalia under the Shariat courts was a functioning country. Look at the state of Somalia right now. How many times has a foreign intervention coming into a country solved an issue? I'm not talking about a local people fighting in a country for their own independence and fighting against oppression. I'm not talking about that. I'm specifically talking about war as a solution. It doesn't work. We in Balochistan have 3 times we've sent our troops there. It hasn't worked. Indians have, in the past 25 years, 25 years, they've got 700,000 troops in Kashmir. It hasn't worked. I'm saying it's not a solution on the whole. And this is not to endorse, and I think it's a slightly out of context, you saying what the Taliban. I'm not endorsing the Taliban rule. I'm just saying that when you use war as a way of solving problems, you might solve one problem, you create 20 others. That was my main issue. And as I said, in our country, we would not want Taliban takeover. You know, we had Taliban TTP, but you know, if they think that their ideology is good, then they should contest elections and win the elections. You know, it's not, you can't impose your ideology through the barrel of a gun. So I'm not for that. And I think you misunderstood it. That's not what I said. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that what the American war has created far more problems. And as you now rightly now know, look at Syria. It's a flashpoint now. God knows where it's going to get us to.
Okay, so the last question from Ms. Ali Ersha.
It's actually not a question, a kind of concern. So it's a pleasure meeting you, Mr. Imran Khan, in person, of course, because you are our hero as well. And there are 2 reasons why you are loved in Afghanistan, loved and respected in Afghanistan. First of all, because of cricket. And when Afghans were in Pakistan, and you were their hero as well. Second, you are a Pathan. Whatever you said, if other brothers from Pakistan or other leaders say something, it doesn't hurt us that much if we hear a small negative thing from your good self. And you may not know that in Afghanistan, Imran is not that common name, but after you being a wonderful cricketer, there are so many kids named after you, you will not believe it. Trust me, you will not believe it. But what made me concerned when you said in your speech that if jihad was halal during Russian time, it must be halal during Americans' occupation as well. Let me make you clear. Russian invaded Afghanistan, but America was invited to come, and the decision was made in the UN National Security Council. Yeah, so it's not an occupation. And the miserable point and the sad point is, we were attacked by Muslims, and we sought America's help. So this was the reason. I hope, as you said, let's forget the past and let's take a positive step towards peace in Afghanistan and Pakistan, of course. Please do not mention like this that Afghanistan is occupied by America. Afghanistan is not occupied by America. Thank you.
Look, maybe I shouldn't have said it. Maybe I shouldn't have said it. It's just that I do not believe, it's just, maybe it's me. I don't believe that anyone has the right to go into any other country. I just don't believe in that. I'm saying as a principle, I do not believe in it. I do believe that it causes more problems in the end. I believe that the Afghan people have a history. They have never accepted oppression. Even if it would have been for a while, it would not have taken long for the Afghan people to have got rid of the oppression. It's the interference, and I include us, it's our interference and outside interference that creates complications. The people of Afghanistan have always been independent, they are freedom-loving, something we admire about them. And it's this desire for freedom that they would not have taken oppression for long. If the British tried 3 times to oppress them, whether they controlled the whole of India, but they could not oppress Afghanistan, there was a reason for it, because people don't accept oppression. So my point is that if we Pakistanis had not interfered, I think Afghanistan would have been able to get rid of any oppression. It was a matter of time. But I think it complicated the whole thing. So let's not maybe I shouldn't have made the comment. Let's not talk what is jihad, what is not. Everyone views jihad differently. But I just want to finish my talk with just one thing. I say this not as because I want to please you. I don't say it because I'm going to win any votes in Afghanistan. I say it as someone who believes that the future of Pakistan and Afghanistan is linked. I believe that we should help Afghanistan in every way. This idea that anyone sitting in Islamabad can control Afghanistan is a fantasy, because they do not realize the history of Afghanistan. Afghanistan has a history, the character of Afghan people. They have never been controlled by anyone. So Pakistan should try and facilitate Afghanistan in getting peace, whichever way we can. It should not be I'm not responsible for what the policy is when you say that Taliban were in Pakistan had dual policy. I don't know. But all I can say is it's wrong to have a dual policy. Pakistan should be straight with Afghanistan. They should try and help Afghanistan. Whatever they say should be the truth. It should not be a policy where, because it's brought such, bad will against the people of Pakistan. If Pakistan was straight, it helps them. It's a neighbor. They're brothers. We are linked together. I'm sure that the future relationship of Pakistan and Afghanistan will be much better. Inshallah. I finish. Inshallah, next government will be Tehreek-e-Insaf, and we will have a proper relationship with you.
Okay. Thank you.